Hello and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Wrap-Up. This is a series where I cover the latest goings-on in the world of Warhammer, as well as things I've been doing in the hobby over the past week, and this week is jam-packed. The first thing I'm covering is Warhammer Fest, and as somebody new to the hobby, I actually hadn't heard of this at all. What it is a 10,000 capacity event going on next year. I think it's something that's happened every year looking at it, except of obviously outside of COVID. And I was looking through basically what's covered at the event because the tickets go on sale in November and the event happens, I think 29th of April next year, and it goes on for a couple of days. So I was looking through what's included and what happens at the event, and it looks absolutely massive. So it looks like there are reveals, some pretty massive reveals of, I guess, models that are releasing, big announcements, 10th edition maybe? I don't know. But huge reveals. And they've got an 800 seat auditorium, so a really large capacity place. I cannot wait to grab a ticket for this, and I hope I can grab a ticket, but I was looking through the website and talking to my mates about it, and I can't wait to actually take part in this. So what's on is the reveals, which I've already mentioned. You actually have Golden Demon going on as well. I ran into a friend today who actually got ready for Golden Demon this year, 2022, and he actually missed out because he couldn't get a ticket, but he's built these like big gothic warships. I'll put a link in the video, and I was quite surprised that you can put all of that effort into attending a Golden Demon and still not attend. So I hope he gets to attend this next year, and it looks like it'll be a lot of fun. Something I was quite gutted at that I missed this year. There are tournaments on. I've only attended a tournament at Element Games, which was fantastic, but it'll be great to see something in a larger capacity as well. So that looks like it'll be really fun. And then announcements about, you know, everything else. Kill Team. There's a hobby hangout where it looks like a bunch of people can just chill and paint together. So just a really fun event, and I can't wait for the tickets to go on sale in November and attend. And seeing all this cosplay too, I've never attended anything where you know, people are dressed up in cosplay, and it looks really interesting. So that is something that ran across my radar this week and got me really excited actually. I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get on to the next point, one thing that really helps me as a new creator is if you can hit that like and subscribe button. It sends all the right signals through to YouTube's algorithm and helps get this to more people and gets more exposure for my channel. Thank you. The second thing to cover this week is the latest balance data slate, and for those of you that don't know, it's something where the Warhammer team are starting to be more transparent with how they're balancing the game. So they have this meta watch where they look at the meta at a higher level and try and balance armies based on how they're performing. They ideally are trying to keep everybody within 45 to 55%. The ones that fall outside of that, they will nerf or boost as a result. Feelings have been mixed, I will say that. So basically, they shared this chart, which we've all seen before. It really hasn't changed since the last one, where Tyranids and Harlequins are still dominating tournaments. That's a surprise to absolutely nobody. And Space Marines, as well as Adeptus Mechanicus, are at the lower end. Let's just quickly talk through the balance changes they've made. So with Tyranids, they've basically changed the way Synapse works. Now, I haven't played Tyranids. I haven't even played against Tyranids, but talking to a couple of friends, as well as watching videos like Auspex Tactics, people seem to think this is a good change. They still won't be a weak army, and they will very likely still dominate the competition by the sounds of it, but it does tone them down just a little bit, where turning off Synapse on, from my understanding, is like the Warriors. It just tones them down a little bit, so not everything is benefiting from rerolls and all of the benefits the Tyranids can throw out. So that sounds like people were like, okay, that's a reasonable change. Some people don't feel like it's enough, so they'll still be really high with their win percent. I, again, haven't faced them yet, so I've got no idea, but people seem pretty happy. Holoquins, long story short, they lost some range on this bike model that you can see here. So basically, my understanding was they could move, do a really far advance, and then still mess somebody up, like mess a unit up. So the change they've made basically is change the second bullet point of Blaze of Light characterization to the following. Each time a unit with this characterization makes a normal move or advances in your movement phase, in your following shooting phase, that unit counts as having remained stationary. This does not apply if the unit is embarked in a transport. So it's a very targeted surgical nerf to whatever this is here. From my understanding, this was a real problem. Again, similar to the Tyranids, people are thinking that that isn't enough of a change, and the Harlequins will still dominate at tournaments and in the meta in general, because basically, yes, that unit was a problem and it will slow it down, but it's still an amazing unit. So Space Marines, Space Marines, people are sort of scratching their heads around. So Space Marines are currently at the bottom of the leaderboard, and essentially the Warhammer team have turned around and said, look, because it's the most popular army and there's a huge range of skill factors, that's actually the reason they're at the bottom, because it's the first army people play when they get into the hobby typically, and a whole range of other factors. I'm not sure I agree with all of that. It does make sense, and it makes sense that people entering tournaments might have Space Marines over others, but people entering tournaments typically aren't beginners, and I do understand completely what they're getting at, but I don't think this is going to be enough of a buff to get them to where they need to be. They've essentially changed one secondary, so basically, long story short, at the end of a game they'll end up with a couple of extra victory points. And then Adeptus Mechanicus, they've removed the nerfs that they already had applied in the last round of updates. Again, I haven't even seen people playing Adeptus Mechanicus in my games. I play quite a range of people. This sounds like it's not really going to do a whole lot. It's not going to take them to the state they were at when they released, which was just these massive command phases where it was like 10 minutes and they're like doing a load of things, and it just wasn't pleasant to play against at all. Nerfs being removed will help them increase a little bit in competitiveness, but it's a long way from being enough. From the sounds of it, the secondaries are still not great, so we'll have to see, but it sounds like it's not going far enough. And then with Necrons, they made one targeted change here. So the core keyword is not added to Necron's vehicle datasheets with the character keyword. So this targets a couple of specific units, basically, one of the main ones being the Silent King. And this does make sense. So the Silent King basically could apply his aura to himself, so he could re-roll and so on and so on. He's got like the orbiting Minhirs that go around him. They're essentially like, or at least this is how I see it as a new player, they're like really tough drones floating around him. And the interaction that existed before is once you killed one of those, you could have a Technomancer resurrecting one of those Minhirs. So it meant that you finally took one of these things down, a Technomancer would just resurrect it and it would be back. So it gave him way too much staying power. It sounds like it was an unintended side effect of the previous buffs they had, which I do agree with. I mean, it makes sense that that would be unintended. That's pretty weird as an interaction. So I think that made sense. It's going to mean the Silent King does become weaker, but he's a really strong unit still. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But Necrons still have incredible secondaries. It's not going to disrupt the meta that much having these targeted buffs, because they are essentially, a couple of their secondaries are free and it just allows them to max out on points. It's very hard to stop them on that. A lot of the chatter on Reddit and just in general in the groups I'm in, people feel like this was a very lackluster balance update. It didn't go far enough. It didn't address the changes that needed to happen to bring everybody in line. So you know, we'll all play it, we'll all see how things develop from here, but I thought it was interesting that they were so tame with this balance update. Then the third and final thing that happened this week that caught my attention is the Votann Land Fortress had a bit of an in-depth preview, and the reason this caught my eye specifically is I had somebody paint up my a couple of my Votann units, so the champion as well as the Carl. I'll put the visual of that up now. And long story short, the Land Fortress is something that I'm really excited for. It got a massive price hike in terms of points. So it's definitely not as competitive anymore. It's very expensive, but it's still got a huge amount of firepower. And having played my first game of Votann this week, I'm really excited to play them a bunch more, and I think this will just be a heavy weapons platform that can slowly trudge across the battlefield and provide firepower exactly where it's needed. So I'm definitely going to pick one of these up, and I can't wait to see it release. I guess the part I'm looking forward to is picking up all the other models with the combat patrol and everything else, so I can't wait to get involved with those. This actual preview of the Land Fortress I did find pretty interesting. I never find looking at grey sprues that interesting, so I was trying to get excited looking at these, but that just doesn't do it for me. But getting down to the weapons, seeing all these heavy weapons, like the heavy rail rifle, that heavy beam weapon, they're just going to be ridiculously strong and a lot of fun to use. And then I got down here and you've got the little pilot in the seat, so there's just a massive amount of detail in there that I can't wait to see in person. So yeah, that was the third thing this week that really caught my attention, and I'm really excited to get my hands on it. So that sums up everything that happened this week in my world of Warhammer. It's been a really fun week keeping my eye on all this various news, and I cannot wait for Warhammer Fest next year. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one.